Good morning. This is Ron. It is Saturday, August the 12th, and welcome to Story Time. And again, welcome. And I'm reading from the 48 Laws of Power, and today, Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you are treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. For a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. As children, we start our lives with great expectation or great exuberance, expecting and demanding everything from the world. This generally carries over into our first forays into society as we begin our careers. But as we grow older, the rebuffs and failures we experience set up boundaries that only get firmer with time. Coming to expect less from the world, we accept limitations that are really self-imposed. We start to bow and scrape and apologize for even the simplest of requests. The solution to such thinking of horizons is to deliberately force ourselves in the opposite direction, to downplay the failures and ignore the limitations, to make ourselves demand and expect as much as the child. To accomplish this, we must use a particular strategy upon ourselves. Call it the strategy of the crown. The strategy of the crown is based on a simple chain of cause and effect. If we believe we are destined for great things, our belief will radiate outward. Just as a crown creates an aura around a king, this outward radiance will infect the people around us, who will think we must have reasons to feel so confident. People who wear crowns seem to feel no inner sense of the limits to which they can ask for or what they can accomplish. This too radiates outward. Limits and boundaries disappear. Use the strategy of the crown and you will be surprised how often it bears fruit. Take as an example those happy children who ask for whatever they want and get it. Their high expectations are their charm. Adults enjoy granting their wishes, just as Isabella enjoyed granting the wishes of Columbus. Throughout history, people of undistinguished birth, the Theodoras of Byzantium, the Columbuses, the Beethovens, the Disraelis, have managed to work the strategy of the crown, believing so firmly in their own greatness that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The trick is simple. Be overcome by your self-belief. Even while you know you are practicing a kind of deception on yourself, act like a king. You are likely to be treated as one. The crown may separate you from other people, but it is up to you to make that separation real. You have to act differently, demonstrating your distance from those around you. One way to emphasize your difference is to always act with dignity, no matter the circumstances. Louis Philippe gave no sense of being different from other people. He was the banker king, and the moment his subjects threatened him, he caved in. Everyone sensed this and pounced. Lacking real dignity and firmness of purpose, Louis Philippe seemed an impostor, and the crown was easily toppled from his head. Regal bearing should not be confused with arrogance. Arrogance may seem the king's entitlement, but in fact, it betrays insecurity. It is the very opposite of a royal demeanor. Haile Selassie, ruler of Ethiopia for 40 or so years beginning in 1930, was once a young man named Lige Tafari. He came from a noble family, but there was no real chance of him coming to power, for he was far down the line of succession from the king then on the throne. Nevertheless, from an early age he exhibited a self-confidence and a royal bearing that surprised everyone around him. At the age of 14, Tafari went to live at the court, where he immediately impressed the king and became his favorite. Tafari's grace under fire, his patience, and his calm self-assurance fascinated the king. The other young nobles, arrogant, blustery, and envious, would push the slight, bookish teenager around. But he never got angry. That would have been a sign of insecurity, to which he would not stoop. There were already people around him who felt he would someday rise to the top, for he acted as if he were already there. Years later, in 1936, when the Italian fascists had taken over Ethiopia, and Tafari, now called Haile Selassie, was in exile, he addressed the League of Nations to plead his country's case. The Italians in the audience heckled him with vulgar abuse, but he maintained his dignified pose, so completely unaffected. This elevated him while making his opponents look even uglier. Dignity, in fact, is invariably the mask to assume under difficult circumstances. It is as if nothing can affect you and you have all the time in the world to respond. This is an extremely powerful pose. A royal demeanor has other uses. Con artists have long known the value of an aristocratic front. It either disarms people and makes them less suspicious, or else it intimidates them and puts them on the defensive. And, as Count Victor Lustig knew, once you put a sucker on the defensive, he's doomed. The con man Yellow Kid Wheel, too, would often assume the trappings of a man of wealth, along with the nonchalance that goes with them. Alluding to some magical method of making money, he would stand aloof like a king, exuding confidence as if he really were fabulously rich. The suckers would beg to be in on the con, to have a chance at the wealth that he so clearly displayed. Finally, to reinforce the inner psychological tricks involved in projecting a royal demeanor, there are outward strategies to help you create the effect. First, the Columbus strategy. Always make a bold demand. Set your price high and do not waver. Second, in a dignified way, go after the highest person in the building. This immediately puts you on the same plane as the chief executive you are attacking. It is the David and Goliath strategy. By choosing a great opponent, you create the appearance of greatness. Third, give a gift of some sort to those above you. This is the strategy of those who have a patron. By giving your patron a gift, you are essentially saying that the two of you are equal. It is the old con game of giving so that you can take. When the Renaissance writer Pietro Aretino wanted the Duke of Mantua as his next patron, he knew that if he was slavish and sycophantic, the Duke would think him unworthy. So he approached the Duke with gifts, in this case paintings by the writer's good friend Titian. Accepting the gifts created a kind of equality between Duke and writer. The Duke was put at ease by the feeling that he was dealing with a man of his own aristocratic stamp. He funded Aretino generously. The gift strategy is subtle and brilliant because you do not beg. You ask for help in a dignified way that implies equality between two people, one of whom just happens to have more money. Remember, it is up to you to set your own price. Ask for less, and that's just what you will get. Ask for more, however, and you send a signal that you are worth a king's ransom. Even those who turn you down respect you for your confidence, and that respect will eventually pay off in ways you cannot imagine. Reversal. The idea behind the assumption of regal confidence is to set yourself apart from other people. But if you take this too far, it will be your undoing. Never make the mistake of thinking that you elevate yourself by humiliating people. Also, it is never a good idea to loom too high above the crowd. You make an easy target. And there are times when an aristocratic pose is eminently dangerous. Charles I, King of England during the 1640s, faced a profound public disenchantment with the institution of monarchy. Revolts erupted throughout the country, led by Oliver Cromwell. Had Charles reacted to the times with insight, supporting reforms and making a show of sacrificing some of his power, history might have been different. Instead, he reverted to an even more regal pose, seeming outraged by the assault on his power and on the divine institution of monarchy. His stiff kingliness offended people and spurred on their revolts, and eventually Charles lost his head, literally. Understand, you are radiating confidence, not arrogance or disdain. Finally, it is true that you can sometimes find power through affecting a kind of earthly vulgarity, which will prove amusing by its extremeness. But to the extent that you win this game by going beyond the limits, separating yourself from other people by appearing even more vulgar than they are, the game is dangerous. There will always be people more vulgar than you, and you will easily be replaced the following season by someone younger and worse. And that was the Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. And it reminds me of the election of 2016 and Donald Trump and both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and that both of them have this kind of quality where Donald Trump walks around with a rather regal and aristocratic bearing to him, and Hillary Clinton said that you got to fake it till you make it, and so she understood that the value or the power of acting the part that you want to play. If you want to be an executive, then you act like an executive. You want to be a king, you act like a king. Or if you want to be president of the United States, you act like you're president of the United States. And for Donald Trump, it worked, and for Hillary Clinton, it did not. So tomorrow is Law 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem to be in a hurry. Hurry betrays a lack of control over yourself and over time. Always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come out to you eventually. Become a detective of the right moment. Sniff out the spirit of the times, the trends that will carry you to power. Learn to stand back when the time is not yet ripe, and to strike fiercely when it has reached fruition. And that will be Law 35 tomorrow on Sunday. And until then, thank you for joining me, and have a good weekend.